and welcome to Every Season Counts, the podcast.
The place where we're going to have fun and raw chats about all things faith and life.
So pull up a pew, grab a coffee, it's going to be so much fun.
Hey guys, welcome back to Every Season Counts, the podcast.
G'day.
Hello everyone. Back with episode 2 of season 2.
Epi 2, let's go. What's on the agenda today, girlies?
Oh my goodness. We're going to be talking about vulnerability, guys.
Bit nervous. Guys, we literally are all just dying of colds and it's so funny.
We're going to try and be as quiet as we can if we need to.
It's fine. In
Grab
the
a
spirit of
tissue.
vulnerability,
We are being vulnerable about our illness.
we're feeling rough as badgers.
So apologies if you hear sniffles in the background and
Little sniffles.
little coughs here and there.
Sneezes.
But the show must go on.
Commitment to the cause. We're in Birmingham. So
The girls have travelled up to Birmingham to film this, guys. Like, that is commitment.
we've gone national.
They've,
Yeah.
they've gone out of the safety of the borders of Cornwall
Oh my goodness.
Into
come up
Birmingham.
to the big wide world of Brum.
I'd just like to say, if you want to see sacrifice, that's what it is.
That really is.
Come into Birmingham, of all places.
All
No, I'm
right.
joking, I love Birmingham.
Don't slate my
Do you
now
know what,
homeland,
though?
bro.
Actually, on a real, growing up, Birmingham was always like, everyone was like, don't go to Birmingham.
Yeah,
And now
literally.
so many of my friends live
I
here, and it's
flipping
like
love
the best
it.
place ever.
Such a beautiful city.
But it's so funny, because that's
Yeah.
all I knew.
It's just flipped
It's
completely.
Yeah, so break,
Birmingham actually is great.
break the myth.
No offence
Birmingham
to anyone.
is beautiful. And if you're going to slate it, come at me.
TK Maxx, biggest one in the country, isn't it?
I'm pretty sure.
In the world.
Maybe in the world. No, it can't be.
That's a big claim to
Definitely
fame.
in the UK, though. It's fat.
There you go,
She's a
everyone.
fat girly.
Get to TK Maxx.
Get to Brummy TK Maxx and you won't be disappointed.
Anyway,
Heard it
back
here
to
first, guys.
vulnerability. Yeah.
Yeah.
On vulnerability today.
What does it actually mean to be vulnerable?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I got the official definition in front of me, actually.
No way. That's
No
such
way.
coincidence.
know. So, vulnerability. The quality or state of being exposed to the possibility of being attacked or harmed, either physically or emotionally. That's pretty cutthroat, actually. I didn't
Mm.
realise how cutthroat a
Yeah,
definition
can you just
that
say
is.
about the bit of vulnerable to what?
being
harm?
attacked or harmed, either physically or emotionally?
Well,
When I think about vulnerability, this is such a weird thing. Like, I always think about like an animal, like a cat. You
Mm.
know that they're safe with you when they turn onto their back
I literally
because their tummy is like the most vulnerable part.
Yeah.
So that's basically
That's like what we do with our friends.
Yeah, and that's like the symbol of like
Yeah.
you're exposing your most like
Being like laid bare in front of your
Yeah.
mates. Not like
Laid
that.
bare.
Lads. No, that's a thing. Someone back me up.
no.
No, it is. Being
Why
laid
just make
bare.
everything disgusting?
Yeah. Guys,
Joking,
I'm tired.
This is fine. Yeah. So vulnerability is basically exposing yourself. But not physically, I hope not. That's not what we're going to be doing on this pod anyway.
No, not today. We're on the emotional train today.
Yeah.
But it sounds like quite a daunting thing to be
Mm.
vulnerable,
Yeah.
right? Like, how do you guys feel about being vulnerable?
Well, I think it's been, do you know what? It's a funny time to talk about this because I feel like this time of my life has been one of really learning about vulnerability, and really learning like how to bring your friends into like how your heart's actually doing,
Yeah.
not just like when you've patched yourself up,
Yeah.
which is a bit of a classic Beth Ibbo move.
Mm.
I'll be like, by the way, this morning I had a breakdown, but I'm fine now. But I've been really trying to like let people in on like the harder parts
Yeah.
of my day. Like the other morning, it was like 8 a.m. and I FaceTime Mads and I was like,
The first thing I said was, "Why'd you look like you're gonna cry?" And then
I was like, I am.
I was like, "Lovely."
Yeah. And I think it is that thing of just like getting to a place of trust with people that you love and that you know really love you, and being like, I don't have it together in whatever sense of the word.
I think as well, I heard this really beautiful thing recently, which actually, when they were speaking about it, they were talking about praying alongside people. It was like basically like how you pray for people in church, like a very practical like preach. But they were saying like when you either pray for someone or support someone, you're not actually like always there to do something, but you're just there to stand alongside them, like actually being like, I am stood right next to you in this. And like, and so when you're like allowing people in, you're just like, all you're saying is like, can you just stand by me in this? And like that's all you have to do, like just stand next to me and say like, we are right here, you're not alone in this. But I guess that's vulnerability for like negative, like not negative stuff, but like when people are feeling rough and like in the hardships. But I think vulnerability also comes with just in your day to day. But then again, I'm the queen of oversharing, so I feel like I'm probably vulnerable about stuff that you just shouldn't be vulnerable about.
No, I think it's great. You've honestly taught me so much about it, because I think like as someone who quite naturally is like, let me fix this and then let people know, I think you've been so good at teaching me like to just be honest about things Beth. Throughout the day as they come. So guys, if you want to learn about vulnerability, follow Mads around for a bit.
Follow Mads.
They even know everything.
I think it's so important though in those little moments to just grab him there and then and be like, actually this affected me, or I'm not 100% happy with this, because otherwise it just builds up over time, and it's just so much better to be in a place where you can just share with those around you, which obviously takes practice, but I think it's a good thing to practice.
But even being like, I actually think the first step is being vulnerable with yourself. That sounds so dumb, but like as in being like, no, actually I feel like crap and this is crap, and like being vulnerable to like your own mind, to like, you know, you constantly hear those like about people who like just can't be in silence because it like lets their minds like they actually have to face what they're feeling. Like that is vulnerability.
Not being quiet.
Yeah,
if that's the case.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like you need to like.
Can't really, ignorance is bliss.
No, you need to confront your crap. Like, sorry if you don't want to hear that, but like I think that is the first. If you can't even tell yourself that, like, say in yourself, I actually like don't want to accept that I'm doing like can do this. Then. Yeah.
And I think it does get easier the more you do it. It becomes less scary, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I used to literally never want to be on my own. As in, like, I'd literally walk to the shops and be like, who can I FaceTime to not be on my own? And I think probably in COVID, actually, was when I really was like, I need to just learn how to be in my own thoughts and not be afraid of, like, what comes up. I think when I first did it, I was like, oh, gosh, like, this is so confronting. But then the more you do it, the more it's like, it's actually just quite nice to know how you actually are doing, and like quite nice to sit down with yourself and be like, where are the places that are bringing me joy and where are the places that are draining me or that I'm finding hard at the moment. And like ask your mates about it as well, like how they get into that place of like knowing themselves well enough to sit still.
Yeah. And I think as well, like learning, I think if you are like, I actually don't even know how I feel about certain things, or like what it is that almost like triggers me, if you will, of being like, oh, like maybe that's a bit of an insecurity of like seeing how you respond in conversations with people, like whether it's to do with like feeling inferior. So like when if like the attention's not on you like are trying to bring it back to you, which is actually kind of, it's not fine, but as in, you have permission to do that in terms of it's okay to feel inferior, and like that's such a natural like response to feeling inferior. But being like sitting and being like, okay, like I didn't like when all the attention was on Beth, like why did I feel like that? Why? Oh, so I don't feel like I feel inferior to this person. Why is that? Etc. etc. And then like that is the like start of that journey of being like, okay, I've now have had to like confront myself on this. Then I need to confront, I don't even know, my actions, and then maybe let people in to like support me in it and be like, this is why I am the way I am. I don't know.
Light bulb. Yeah.
Liz, what do you think?
I just think that growing up, I was absolutely terrified of being vulnerable, and I don't know if that's because I'm a quieter person, so I wouldn't like naturally just shout about how I'm feeling or say something to someone that I don't really know. So for me, like being vulnerable, it took a lot of practice to do. And I think it was, like you've just said, Mads, starting with myself and then passing it on to other people. But I think being vulnerable has just actually brought me so much freedom and just allowed like a weight to be lifted off my shoulders. And I think that so often it's seen as like this really daunting, scary thing to be vulnerable, but actually it's all part of a healing process when you're going through something really deep. But I think it's about just like being kind with yourself, and that actually it's a big thing to be vulnerable, so it's okay to feel like it's a scary thing. But actually when you do it, just like knowing my experience and others around me, like it does bring so much freedom.
What do you think was like your fear of being vulnerable? Like, what was it that you actually were worried about? Was it people knowing you deeply, or? Yeah,
I think so. And I think just being rejected because of that, and being like, oh, if I open my heart up to this person and actually they don't like me for fully who I am, then I've lost a person. And actually it brought us closer.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, it definitely, being vulnerable in my experience has brought me closer to those around me and almost created this bond of just, it just deepens your friendship.
100%.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting, because I think for me, like, vulnerability for a long time was like share to a certain point that won't make people feel uncomfortable. But then I was like, the part that's like the deepest part, or like the most painful part, I'll kind of keep for myself, because I don't want people to be like, oh gosh, Beth really is going through it. And I think it's been like a massive thing of just learning to really be like, to trust, like the person that you're speaking to is going to hold you in it, and it's not going to be like, yep, that's too much, see you later. And I think that's like a whole nother layer of it as well, is not just sharing to the point of it being like, good, they know enough that they'll be satisfied that I'm sharing, and like they'll feel close enough to me, but not all the way in.
There's like a point where you're like, this actually is a point where I'm
quite
saying
uncomfortable
this
now.
And like they could literally turn around and be like, yeah, that's too far, love.
I
think as well, like, and I feel like it sounds pretty deep, but if you think about it, like generationally, our parents we are out of now, but when we were born, we were coming out of this like real generational culture of, you don't talk about your crap,
self-preservation,
like you're not vulnerable, don't talk about how you feel. Mental health was not an aware, like no one was aware of their mental health. And so I think actually culturally, like within the last probably like 20 years, vulnerability was not a thing, like really wasn't, like to tell people how you feel, like, because it was all about like how people perceived you, like everything was to do about your perception. And so
absolutely blows my mind. How did people live?
And so we grew up really like being raised with no, like by no fault of our parents, but being raised in a culture, I would say, maybe it's a bit of a blanket statement, of like not seeing our parents being that vulnerable.
I don't feel like it was a massive culture in my family. I don't think I got to being an adult and being like, okay, I really know how to like process my feelings. I think a lot of that learning has been through friendships, to be honest, and people really intentionally like wanting to know who I am. And like giving me the permission to be like, Beth, what's actually going on in your heart? And like just really like that learning thing of being like, oh, I am safe here to do this, and like this is how I communicate how I'm feeling. It's funny, isn't it? I wonder if we'll be different with our kids, how different the generations will be.
I hope so. Not that my parents are bad parents, but as in, I really hope like if I had children that like they would feel so validated in how they felt of being like, because again, like our feelings are actually very fleeting and like not very reliable actually, like at all. And so it's getting that balance of being like, your feelings like need to be expressed, need to be heard, but they are not like a boulder, like they're not rock, like
that's not it forever.
No. And like that isn't, and again I think that's another whole reason why sharing it with people is so powerful, because when you're in like I just think our minds are so like complex, so powerful, that there's actually a lot of things that we are like internalizing that we don't even realize is unhealthy, like our view of like specific things within us, or even like a situation. And so to be able to like share that with someone who actually like is out of our head, that sounds ridiculous, but like they are seeing it from a way different perspective, and so they can be like, bruh, like you have got that wrong, or like Mads, like you need to give yourself so much more kindness in that, or
can just speak like truth into it, I think 100%. A little bit and more directly than maybe you could to yourself. And it is getting that balance of being like, me sharing this with this person isn't going to solve it, like they don't like 9 times out of 10 they won't have the answers to like if it's a problem that you're trying to solve, etc. But there is such power in sharing it and like letting it out. And even on the spiritual place of like, the first thing the enemy wants to do is like isolate you, to like put you on your own. And so as soon as you like open things out into community, like that is like already breaking one barrier down of this like spiritual battle we're getting on.
I think just on what you said, Mads, about a person not necessarily being able to give you the answer, I think it's so important when opening yourself up and being vulnerable to not go in with the mindset of, I'm going to open this up and it's going to be fixed immediately. Like, it's not another person's job to fix what's going on, but just to be there and to, like you said, have a different perspective, I think is really helpful. But just going in with the right mindset of not being let down because it's not fixed by one conversation.
And it can be quite like, that is, I know that I have definitely slipped into that even in recent years, of like, have gotten like happy with being vulnerable, especially with my current mentor. Like, I literally used to just, any issue I had, I'd just ring her straight away. Like, the amount of times she's picked up the phone and me like, help me, this is going on. Like, I mean, not as like traumatic, as distressing as that, but just like literally like anything, I just would call her. And then I remember this one time, like I was like really like struggling like in my feels, and she wasn't answering, which of course is fine. She's got a life other than having to cope with my issues. But and then I was like, flip, like I actually like realised like how much I like relied on her to like speak truth over me, which is like, you do need those people, like Beth was saying, to speak truth over you, but like there is a point of being like, oh, like they aren't the like remedy to this, like I need to like take this up with God, or like try and like self-regulate, I guess, of like
I think what you said as well, oh gosh. Sorry, I'm not crying. That's literally the cold. I think what you were saying about the isolation side of things, like that's quite a good rule of thumb that I found in my life. Like, anytime that I feel like I need to isolate, I'm like, this is when I need to get people around me. Even if it feels like the most unnatural thing ever. And I'll literally just message someone being like, hello, I'm not having a good day. Like, because I think that is exactly what the enemy wants, is to get you in your own head, and then the lies start coming in. And I think it's then when you need to be like, okay, who are my people that I can bring around me today? To just even know, like, not to expect them to fix it, but just so that you're not just sat there in your own head being like, I'm so alone. Because like that's like my go-to feeling of like, if I'm struggling, I'll be like, I don't even have any friends anyway, which I do, but I have to like be intentional in getting them around me. Obviously I have friends, I'm sat with 2 of them.
Loner. No. But that is like, it is, I would say it's like the go-to like of the enemy, is like the classic is get them isolated, get them on their own, make them feel like they're crazy, that like 100%. If they tell someone this, like that people are gonna be like, are you on like a mad one? Like, because when you're on your own, no one can, like, you can't be pulled out of it if you're on your own. Whereas in a community, they can help you see like the truth, see the light, and
brings accountability.
Have accountability. And I think as well, like, and again, like we were saying with the like generational thing, actually, where if vulnerability really wasn't something that is like been a long time coming, how profound it actually is within the Bible, because there is so many like areas of vulnerability. Like the literally entirety of the Psalms is like David just ripping open his heart to God,
up and down,
like to an outrage. I remember reading the Psalms and literally being like, this dude, like, he is just so open with God, like, just so raw in how he feels, and like just tells God everything. I remember literally finding that so shocking. And again, if you think about it, like at the time that the Psalms was written, or like the fact that it was like pre-Jesus, pre-resurrection, pre-crucifixion, like how profound that actually would have been in that time of like, oh, like God is like this person you can chat to and have a relationship with. Like they just would not.
Such a legalistic time.
Yeah, they would not have.
David was just like dancing and crying and singing.
He was on a mad one. And I just think that is so like so beautiful, and just so of like God's character and what he wants us to be like. I would say vulnerability is biblical, like, and it's actually as much of a like invitation. It probably is a discipline, I would say, to be vulnerable with your friends, of like you need to stretch that muscle of vulnerability to grow and be like pushed out of your comfort zone, and so it's not always going to be fun, but it is definitely worth it. Lids, what like would you say that there's like a pinpoint time where you were like was the hardest time to be vulnerable, of like being like, flip, this is like really painful for me? You don't have to go into what it was about, but like how you felt in that moment, and then also like how it was received.
That's a good question.
So I was probably like 13, 14, and I had a really good group of friends, and I was going through something behind closed doors, I guess you could say, where no one knew, and I'd act completely normal around everyone. Like it was like it was something I kept hidden on purpose. And I felt one day like I don't want to be dealing with this anymore on my own. Like it was completely eating me alive, and I took a step to just sit down with one of my friends that I was really close with, and I just said, hey, I need to talk to you. And we went out for a coffee, which for me was so much like better than just sitting in school playground and being like, hi guys, let's just chat, and then people being able to come in and like jump in on a conversation. But for me, it needed to be a one-on-one situation. So I sat down with this person and I just said what was going on, and I literally, my heart was racing like the entire time when I was opening up to this person. And at the end of it, I like kind of like took a step back, and I like did it, like released my breath, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I've just done that. And they were like, I'm just so sorry that you were going through this and I didn't even know. And then I was like, flip, like they just wanted to know so they could help me. And it's just taking that first step of like we build up this fear in our mind so much, I think, and we overthink everything. But actually, if you know the people closest to you, you know they love you, they just want to be there to help you. And if you feel very safe and comfortable in your community and the people around you, like they want to know how you're feeling. So I think for me, I just needed to take that step, which I did, and it was hard to do. But once I'd done it, like I could then open up to more people around me.
That's so good, Liz.
So, yeah.
I don't know why, it's literally just suddenly spurred on, and I hadn't even thought about this, but like my first time being really vulnerable was with you, Lids.
Really?
Yeah, at Soul Survivor.
Oh my gosh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
I'm going to tell this story because it's actually outrageous. Well, it's not outrageous, but it was beautiful. Me and Lids grew up in youth together, like people probably knew that, but we all went to Soul Survivor, which, if you don't know, is a like a Christian festival that used to happen every year. Like 10,000 young people would come together. It was literally mad. Anyway, this is so funny. So we were all at the silent disco or something. Like they used to do these massive parties in the evening. It was lit. For a 14-year-old, it was lit. But we were in this party, and then I don't know if I just walked out of it, but saw you, Lids, who like we were friends, we're not like not anywhere near what we are now. Like we knew each other, like thought you were cool, thought you were pretty quiet, but whatever, weren't that close. And then I don't know if I said, one of us must have said to each other like, oh, can we just go and sit for a chat or something. And I think I must have been feeling really convicted about this stuff that I'd been doing. And I literally remember being like, I'm going to tell her. Like, but literally thinking that it was illegal. I remember in my heart being like, she's going to call the police. And it's not even an illegal thing, Cameron, to say at all. Like, it's just, yeah. But I remember literally being like, oh, she's going to like tell my youth worker and then like everything's going to go wrong and I'm going to get arrested. And like, yeah. And I just remember saying it. And then actually the beautiful thing was that you said me too, which was really beautiful. Wow. And like, we had this space of just being like flip, like we're both like really like in this thing and like yeah. I don't know what you felt like because we've never really spoken about it since then. But that was actually probably my first time where I was like,
wow.
I don't know about you though, but I felt so relieved to hear someone else saying exactly what I was going through, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like like the perfect timing, the perfect person to be having this chat with. And also, for me, I think that's when we actually became friends.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, because you instantly, as soon as you say that, like, you're instantly like, oh, wow, like, this person actually, like, knows quite a deep thing about me, and they still decided to stay.
Yeah.
That is just, like, so beautiful. And, yeah, I remember, and I was so shocked. When you said, oh, me too, I was like, what? I was like, I thought I was a freak, literally. And, like, I just remember, I don't know if we cried, but, like, probably, it was a flipping deep moment. Yeah. Like, yeah, I don't know if you've got a little story, Bethy Boo, in your pocket.
Yeah, actually I do. And I was just thinking about it. And I feel like, just to play the other side of it, when I was, like, probably one of the first times I was really vulnerable, it wasn't received well. And I was really going through something, like, one of the hardest times, really, when I look back. And the person that I told basically was like, every fear of mine was like, sorry, this is too much. I need to take a step back. And I was like, right. Like, what do you do with that? And I think, honestly, like, I look back at that time now and, you know, everything is so different. Like, I'm in a really different place and friendships feel really different. And just even the way, like, I know the Lord is really different, which makes a massive change to how I think we deal with things and process things. But I guess, if you are listening to this and, like, when you've spoken to someone or really just laid your soul bare, I know you don't think that's but it is a thing.
Laid your soul bare, yeah, not laid bare.
Laid bare, I've heard people say that.
It sounds like
anyway, let me just get back to my...
Sorry, back into the depth, sorry.
Sorry about that, everyone. Breaking my vulnerability.
Sorry, no,
I'm joking. Yeah, if you are listening to this and when you have really just been like, okay, here's my heart, and if someone has been like, whoa, that's too much, that just might not have been the right person to share it with. And it doesn't mean that sharing vulnerably is wrong or it's not like a safe thing to do in friendship. It's just finding the right people to do it with, I think. And like, I am really sorry if that's happened to you, because like I found that really hard and it really did impact the way I did friendships for like a long time. And it's been like so restorative, like being friends with people who I knew were there for it, like thick and thin. But like, I would just encourage you, if you find yourself even now being like, gosh, the actual thought of sharing like the ugly parts of like what's going on, not just, you know, the semi not great stuff, but really like the deep stuff, just think about like now, like a couple of people who you really know your heart. And I would just challenge you, like, yeah, take them for coffee and be like, guys, this is what's going on. Because I think you do it once and it breaks the fear a little bit.
Yeah.
And you do it again and you just, I think, start to build up more of a trust of yourself and of the relationships around you. And it's really healing. So, yeah, that would be my little 2 cents.
Yeah, so good. I love that. And I think as well, one thing I think people often forget or like don't realise, and this is probably one of the reasons why it's so hard, is that vulnerability has to come hand in hand with boldness. Of like, it's this weird like paradox mix of like, sorry,
I'm sure that was a dog. I was really confused.
Sorry, my slipper just fell off my foot and Beth got scared. Yeah, I think it's this weird paradox of being like, really humble and like just quite like grounded in what you're about to say, but actually it's this like boldness of like, I don't know, it almost just feels like you're like putting your armor on. It's like usually boldness comes with putting your armor on, but actually you're being bold in like taking your armor off.
Ooh.
Flipping head.
I like that. That's so good.
But it's true of like, yeah, and maybe that is why like society doesn't bring vulnerability naturally, because actually it is quite like a holy biblical thing of like, again, think about like the crucifixion of Jesus, like he took on and conquered sin, but through getting naked and like being whipped and tortured and literally like brutally exposed to like the nth degree.
Yeah, when we think about the definition of vulnerability, that's literally it, isn't it?
Yeah, Jesus on the cross, being exposed physically and
emotionally.
Whoa, Jesus is in the dictionary, guys. Yeah, I just think like giving, as in more of a like giving you permission of like vulnerability takes boldness, and so be kind to yourself in like it just being small things, like take it again, like I mentioned earlier, like it's a muscle that has to be like stretched gradually, and one of you guys said like as you stretch it more, the more you'll be able to do it. Of like, I struggle with vulnerability now. I literally overshare so bad, guys. Like I don't discern the right times to say specific things of like, not maybe like when I'm struggling, but just really stupid things of like them just being like, we didn't need to know about that, Matt.
But thank you for sharing.
Yeah. So yeah, but I think be encouraged that in you being vulnerable, you are being bold, and you are like being bold in who God's made you to be and what he says about you, instead of allowing yourself to like sit in that place of being like, I am alone in how I feel. Because as well, I don't think I've ever shared something before that other people haven't gone through as well. Like how we feel is like we all go through very similar things, and like obviously there will be things that we all go through differently, but you are never alone in what you've experienced, how you feel, where your mind goes in some scenarios. Because like, that's another thing, like you sometimes just feel so crazy, like to think and feel the way you do, but actually that is normal, and that is okay, and there's permission in that.
I think just to kind of finish, I guess, that kind of ties it all together is we were speaking about how getting vulnerable with yourself is really good, and we've spoken about how getting vulnerable with a friend brings this closeness and freedom, and also gives them permission to be vulnerable back to you. But I think it's also so important to get vulnerable with God as well before you necessarily do anything else, to just be like, God, I'm having a really tough day today. And like he knows it, but he wants us to have that communication with him and just being open with him about how we're feeling in our day to day. So I think that's also something we kind of might forget, to just be like, oh, I need to give it to God. But sometimes it's so easy to just like throw it up onto everyone else before going to God first.
Yeah, that's so true.
So beautiful.
But yeah.
And the permission in that of like, God, even like we should tell God things and be vulnerable with him, but he already knows, and he still chooses us every single time. Like he knows the worst things about us that we probably don't even know, and like subconsciously don't think about, and yet he still says like, no, I want you, I'm gonna die, I died on the cross for you, and like the sacrifice, like you are still worthy of the cost, even in like the rawest, most ugliest form. And so again, he's the perfect person to practice with, because he's never going to leave. Thank the Lord.
Seriously.
We've spoken about some good stuff, guys.
Deep dive straight off the back of Epi 1.
I'm excited for where this is going to go this season. About us being vulnerable. Well, thank you for listening, guys, and tuning in. We'll catch you next episode. But yeah, thanks. Thanks, guys.
Have a good week.
Goodbye.
Bye.